Hey everyone, welcome back. I'm really excited to have you guys for another one of my sessions with Where Do We Go From Here? Today I'm really excited to have Shawna Carter, a very good friend of mine from business school, join us. She works at Egon Zehnder. She's a consultant with them working on leadership advisory. And I wanted to talk to her a little bit about, what are her perspectives on what's going on with the current crisis and how we think about leaders and leadership skills and development going forward. So Shawna, thank you so much for giving me some time and joining me today.
Thanks for having me.
Yes, of course. So I think let's just jump right into it. I like to keep these really short and sweet, and I just want to get your perspective on what's going on in the world at the moment. So the first question, same three questions that I always ask, you know, what's been the impact of the current pandemic on the world that you work in, and specifically in professional development, leadership advisory, executive search? What's been the immediate impact?
So especially in the executive search world, a lot has slowed down. It's definitely true. I would say that most companies have paused some types of hiring. And we hear from a lot of candidates that they're seeing less opportunities. And for job seekers, for people who are between roles, that can be really stressful. Some companies have implemented broad-based hiring freezes. But there are lots of other companies that realize this is also a time to find great people too, and that some disruption has made people who might not have been available. So there are definitely some opportunities, and it's opening up some interesting opportunities for people. So some roles that may have previously required a lot of travel, for example, and maybe for some people might not have worked if they needed to do too much travel and couldn't do that, or even relocation if they were based in a city and previously the company might have said, no, you need to be local. People are re-examining that. So there's definitely some opportunities as well.
And are you seeing that as something that's also impacting like the skills necessary or the skills required for particular roles, for particular placements?
Absolutely. I think this has really had a big impact on what people are looking for. Hiring committees, search committees want leaders who can thrive in uncertainty, and whatever challenges come next. Hopefully there won't be another global pandemic, but they've realized that they really need people who can be versatile and flexible. And when we assess people, we look, of course, for the competencies, the experiences they've built up, but also their potential. And what they can grow into, the leaders they can be and become. And that's something that we're seeing a lot more interest and a lot more levels throughout an organization.
So like we've kind of jumped into what my normal second question would be, right? So, what's why do we care about the impact that's currently happening, right? Like with the different things that you described with less roles and less opportunities. Now there's, different skill sets being looked at, and perhaps there's concessions from the sides of people who are looking for talent. Why does that matter, right? Like what's the short term, I think we just discussed a little bit of the short-term consequences. What are some of the long-term consequences of that?
I think in the long term, the most meaningful impact will be what we were just touching on, that companies are really going to be valuing leadership agility more than tick the box experience. Yes, of course, they want people who've done the most important things that are relevant for the role, but more broadly, they're going to be looking for leadership skills and the potential of leaders, which is something they've done at the highest levels for some time. But we're seeing that more and more throughout the other parts of an organization, that leadership skills, agility, versatility are going to be longer term, something that's much more important in all types of hiring.
That's really interesting. I almost wonder, have you come across folks that, potentially wouldn't have fit your criteria previously, but just really sparkle when it comes to, let's say, managing online, right? Or managing remotely? Is that something that you've been seeing that you're like, has become a criteria that's much more important than before?
Well, in general, when we look for people in our searches, we of course have some, desired things that we want this person to have done, but we place much more emphasis on the competencies, on things like what can they do. So for example, their strategic orientation, and that's something that they may have been able to demonstrate in a range of different ways. So maybe they haven't had 20 years as a general manager of a automotive business that's more than $500 million. But if
Mhm.
they have been able to show that they have that strategic orientation in other areas that could be relevant, people are often willing to look at that.
Oh, that's really, really interesting. And it's just so crazy, like in terms of the world that we're living in right now. And the last question, right, the big thing that I always ask in the title of the series is, well, where do we go from here, right? If you're a young person today, how is what's going on going to really impact your future, right? And particularly in this area that you work in, what would be the things that you'd want to know or want to think about if you were a young person now?
So I would say if you're one of the relatively fortunate people and you're safely employed, that
Mhm.
doesn't mean that you should just say, well, I've got a job and that's the be all and end all. It's a great time now to do some reflection and really think about how you feel about the role that you're in. Job searches can sometimes take months. So
Great.
just because the role that you ideally want isn't available right now, maybe the company has a hiring freeze, that doesn't mean that it's not a good time to start thinking about where you want to see yourself in 5 years and invest in that self-reflection. If you are looking for a role, a couple of suggestions I would say, people have more time on their hands in a lot of cases. So people who are often traveling a lot for work are more likely to have some time in their calendar, and geographical boundaries are not really a limitation. So don't be shy in reaching out for people for coffee chats, for video chats,
Mhm.
if you want to learn about what they do. And of course, if you can find a way to add some value in it for them, that's always a great thing. But a few tactical pieces of advice I would say, if you are a job seeker, even if you're feeling stressed about the current circumstances, try not to overplay your hand too much, because even if people aren't traveling, there's a lot of Zoom calls. So too much follow up can turn people off, and we've seen some of that. And treat a video chat the same way you would an in-person meeting, whether that's an interview or a coffee chat. Prepare for it, be on the line early, check for audio, visual difficulties, because you can manage a lot how your impression comes across in video, just like in real life.
That's really helpful. I think that's such good advice, as we just learned, right? As I was tinkering with the Zoom before we started our own chat.
Well, you've already impressed me, Imran, so nothing to worry about there.
Well, I really, really appreciate your time, Sean. I think this was super helpful just to give people who are out there who might be in the position of either have roles or are looking for roles or looking or thinking about how they want to develop themselves further. I think this is just a really useful piece of advice and some context on what's going on at the moment. So thanks so much for your time. Really appreciate it. And
Thank
until
you.
next time. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.